biology is biology. Like the laws of biology exist for the same people. And so if you can always figure out like what kind of physiology do you need to be a good grappler? How does like my energy systems in general, like my mitochondrial function need to function to be an elite, jiu-jitsu athlete? The more I can rely on fats, the less I rely on glucose. The more glucose you rely on, the more lactate is possible to make. Whoever has the least amount of lactate in their system is probably going to have a benefit. And that's where carnitine comes in. It really steers your body towards like, hey, let's use more fat. And that's why we get the glycogen sparing. That's where we get the energy benefits that you feel from it. And when we have a lot of glucose available and lactate, as though we're a little more spry. I can push a higher contraction. I'm stronger. So that's one side of it.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Settled Strength Podcast. Today's guest is Jake Benson. Jake Benson is a performance coach who has experience working with some of the best athletes in the entire world, ranging from powerlifting, bodybuilding, MMA, and he also works with Mason Fowler, who is the light heavyweight UFC BJJ champion. Jake is someone that has an immense amount of knowledge and information when it comes to optimizing our biology and using these different supplements, these different protocols to help us get more out of every performance and get more out of every single training session. This episode is jam-packed with all sorts of great information that can help you lift heavy, roll hard, and recover faster, so be sure to listen to the entire thing. Jake, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be on here.
Absolutely, bro. I'm freaking stoked to have you. You're like someone that I've learned so much from, and I'm just like the way you have imparted wisdom and information on training, nutrition, recovery, and all that stuff has significantly impacted how I train, how I coach my athletes. So I'm super stoked that we actually get to put a conversation on wax so we can share with everybody else.
Yeah, I'm pumped. And thank you for that. That really does mean a lot to me.
For sure, man. For sure. Well, before we get too deep into the weeds, I did want to ask you, what was it like the first time you rolled with Mason Fowler?
No. I obviously tapped him like pretty quick. No. So I mean, I'm below white belt level of jiu-jitsu, right? Like I love training with those guys. But Mason, I mean, I'm like, dude, it's a joke. It's such a joke. He can do whatever he wants. He's so incredible at what he does. I mean, he's the best. In my opinion, I think he's the best 205 by a pretty good margin right now. Yeah, so it's not fun. It's not fun rolling with Mason. I just get tired really quick.
It seemed like since you started working with him, he's not, I don't know if like where he was at as far as retiring and all that stuff, but I noticed that once you guys linked up together, it seemed like he just has gone on this absolute tear at some really, really high-level competitions, which has been awesome to see. And now he's doing UFC BJJ, which is pretty dope. So whether you're working with someone like Mason, who's competing at an extremely high level, or you're just working with another grappler who maybe isn't competing at a high level, but they just freaking love training hard and all that stuff, what would you say are some of those common roadblocks you've seen that get in the way of grapplers being able to train hard and recover harder?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And obviously, like, there's a little bit of, I would say the main difference between somebody like Mason and just somebody who's doing it for fun, maybe even competitively, but doesn't have time to like, quite go full time on it, it is really just the amount of time that they're allowed to rest, right? And if there's less time to be able to rest, and you're spending, some of these physiological currency on other things, then like, you're not going to be able to adapt quite as quickly as somebody like that. But I mean, but the end thing is, biology is biology. Like the laws of biology exist for the same people. And so if you can always figure out like, hey, these are my limiting factors. These are my gatekeepers, like I was kind of talking to you about before we started recording. If you can figure out your gatekeepers and like, hey, this is the thing that's kind of holding me back. And these are like the highest ROI gatekeepers, then you're going to keep making progress and you'll get to a spot where, I mean, you could really get up to that level,
What would be an example of a couple gatekeepers that you see? Is it just they're not able to get enough sleep, their nutrition is kind of limited? What are some of those common gatekeepers you found?
Man, it can be all over the place. And I think this is such a good question. I love this question. Because there are oftentimes things that just seem so normal to us that are just so like socially acceptable to us that we don't even really consider them bad habits. But I would say they're centered around like the way that we look at sleep, the way we set up sleep, the way that we like eat, the way that we just kind of do normal things, the way that we view things. I've seen some people where I would say their biggest gatekeeper is their perspective,
Mm.
where they're stuck thinking like, man, I'm never like, I'm angry. I'm just angry at the world. I'm like, and it's like, man, just like switch your perspective and all of a sudden it's like they're making crazy progress, or sometimes it's like, hey, like put down your phone. It's like, can you eat without your phone? Can you go to the bathroom without your phone? Can you drive without your phone? If you can't, then it's like that might be one of your biggest gatekeepers, right? Like, because every time that you're doing something that's like not necessary, right? Especially like being on your phone and being on social media or like looking at the latest news and whatnot. Um, your brain is basically like, hey, this is important, right? This is important. No, this is important. What am I, and like when you're not on your phone, it's like, what am I missing that's important that could be happening? That's kind of why we're drawn to our phone, And there's actual physiological dysfunction associated with that as well. But it's kind of that underlying issue is like, something's important, something's important, something's important. If there's always something important, then nothing's important, right? And if your brain's just always ramped up, this is important. Like, what am I missing? What am I missing? Blah, blah, blah. Should I think this is important? It's trying to decide. I mean, that's dopamine's job, right? So everyone's wondering, like, why do I have such a dopamine issue? Why am I so tired? Why do I not care about anything? It's like, you're trying to care about too much, right? You're trying to care about way too much. And so put it down, like, pick the things that are important to you, which is hopefully like, you and your family and the people that are closest to you. You'll probably make more progress doing that than anything. All of a sudden it's like, wow, I have energy. This is more important. Like color's kind of coming back, right? Because you're not just bogged down and constantly just stimulating the system that's trying to decide if something's important.
Would it be safe to say, and maybe I'm not making the right connection here, but is it safe to say that people's training is already so sympathetic, but then when training's over, they're just prolonging that sympathetic state and they're not really getting into that rest, digest, recovery mode? And because of that, because they're on their phone, they're constantly checking the news, they're doing all these maybe not quote unquote stressful things like compared to like the most stressful part of their job, but it's still applying some sort of stress. Is that what you're saying is kind of getting in the way of them being able to recover and then continue making adaptations?
Yeah, so I would say there's a couple ways to look at that. And one, what you're saying right now is it impedes the recovery systems, right? So if you look at, hey, this is the physiology that needs to occur for me to enter into a recovery state, like you have to bring that neuromodulator tone down, right? Got to bring the neuromodulator tone down. We got to bring the catecholamines down. It's just like the dopamines, the norepinephrines, the whatever. It's like they all need to like come down. We need to breathe. We need to let our blood vessels open up. We need to have a lot of this like, hey, this is safe. I'm good, whatever. And the faster you can get on into that, the faster you get to start recovering. And so, and then the other part of that is like if you're constantly just revved up and trying to rev up, it's like, if like this is your potential of being revved up and you're revved up all day, all of a sudden it's just dropping, it's dropping, it's dropping, it's dropping. And then you come into training and you're like, how do I get up here? This is where I need to be. I want to be like up here, but I'm stuck here until you end up using stims, right? It's like stim, more caffeine, more, I don't know, there's lots of stims. Nicotine's huge in jujitsu, right? Like how many times do you see Zen packs?
Yeah, all the time.
Right. Yeah. And it's like that, not that that's a bad tool per se for the right time, right place, right? But it's like, man, you don't need to go up. You need to come down. You need to come down, breathe, reset. And then getting up here is going to be easy. Like the cost to get up here becomes, it becomes so much smaller, it becomes so much easier. Your body wants to go there. But if it's up here all the time and it's creating all these, neural inflammation, it doesn't want to go back up there. So you're kind of stuck in this like no man's land of like, I'm not resting and recovering because I'm not letting it come down, but I also can't get up to where I need to be. So now I'm just kind of feel like crap all the time and I'm looking for relief. you know?
It sounds like, and I've heard you use this term before, kind of you're in that wired tired place where you're a
hmm
little bit too wired up to like fully rest and get good sleep and recover, but you're also too tired to like really, turn up the intensity and push yourself in a training session.
Yeah, it's not a fun place to be. And it can cause, it's funny because that symptom of why you're tired can be the cause of a couple different dysfunctions. So you can kind of have this like, hey, like I drove up dopamine so much that I have so much neuroinflammation that, now I have this dynorphin expression. And dynorphin expression is literally dysphoria. That's like the withdrawal feeling. So if you're feeling kind of like withdrawal all the time and you're like, man, I always just kind of feel sick. Like I always kind of just got that weird headache, like kind of nausea feeling. That's what I call core trap. It's like you're stuck in core trap where it's like, the dopamine's been up too hot for too long because dopamine is out of everything can burn hot, right? Can burn really, really hot to the point that it causes damage. So we have a system built in called the dynorphin, core system that basically is pulling dopamine down and then keeping it down, right? And now, but it feels so gross that you end up doing a bunch of things just to get relief. And this is where that's how addiction. That's the exact physiology that causes addiction. But we see it with all sorts of things. We see it with phones. We see it with porn. We see it with caffeine, stimulants, all sorts of things, habits. It's like you're not even doing it because it causes in you kind of any pleasure anymore. It's like it's just relief,
Mm-hmm.
And once you're there, it's like that's not a good place to be. We gotta gotta bring this all down for a second, and then it will just
Right.
naturally come back up.
Gotcha. So for someone that is like in a position like me, like I love training hard, lift heavy in the morning, roll hard later in the afternoon, sometimes at night. A common thing that I've talked about with my training partners is this feeling where after a full long day of work, especially if I've already lifted in the morning, sometimes I feel like I need a little something to just kind of have the energy for that evening training session. But that often comes at the cost of just being too amped up right after training and having a hard time falling asleep and getting to bed. So when you're working with an athlete that does some of those evening training sessions after a long day of work, what are some of the protocols or maybe some of the implementations you'll use to help them kind of get ramped up for training, but not at the cost of them being able to come down afterwards and get to bed?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things I would think about there is one, we need to make sure that at some point during the day, like you are having some kind of rest. Even if it's just like a couple of times throughout the day, I'm gonna take 5 to 10 minutes, close my eyes and just breathe and just try to relax your face, relax your breathing. Sometimes you'll notice your face is so tight that you actually constrict your own nasal passageway,
Mm,
And so all of a sudden you relax and you're like, wait, I can breathe through my nose. I was just like, my face was just clenched up. So like take a couple times where it's coming down. Glutamate gets to come down. Give your astrocytes a chance to basically these little cells that clean up, glutamate like the neuroexcitement. Um, Let them catch up, let them breathe. All of a sudden, you'll kind of notice, like, oh, I'm kind of just kind of coming back to life, right? It's like, oh, I feel I'm kind of getting my second wind. So, like, just implementing a couple of things like that, where it's like there's intentional, even if it's just a couple minutes breaks of I'm going to intentionally just relax, not on my phone. Like being on your phone, that doesn't count as rest. So when you see people like, oh, I'm going to take a break, and you pull out your phone. That's not a break. you know, like if you're on TV, not a break. That doesn't count. Like it's I'm out, right? Like I can hear the birds around me kind of thing, not like, like that. And then the second part would be, okay, let's say you are tired, which is not a bad thing to be tired at the end of the day, right? Like I don't think that's necessarily the issue, but it's like, okay, now I have this training window. I have this training window and let's say it's 90 minutes, right? Or 60 minutes or 90 minutes or whatever. It's like, okay, I want to be here. Like, as far as like my arousal, like I want my arousal to be here. I'm currently here, right? But I need to be back here for sleep, right? So how do I so what you end up getting is like this area and you want your arousal curve to match the training as much as possible. And anything that exists outside of that is now what we call a burden cost, right? So when training ends, if you're still stimulated, that's like area under the curve that we're now counting as burden cost.
hmm.
Right. So it's like, okay, if I'm coming up, I need to make sure I can come down. So, if you look at like caffeine, for example, it's like caffeine technically isn't going to be out of your system even with the fastest digestion in about 11 hours. It's like it's still doing something, even if it's minimal, even if you're tolerant to it, like it's still doing something. I know some people that can like drink caffeine and go to bed, like coffee. That's not a talent. That's not something you should be proud of. Right. But it's like, that's gonna last longer than you think. And the other problem, like with something like, caffeine, if you're going to drink a Monster or whatever and go in, is it actually takes a lot longer than you think for it to ramp up all the way. Because first it has to block adenosine, and then that creates a reaction, which kind of gets, kind of like, oh, okay, there we go. There's the dopamine. There's like, and it starts its own little cascade, and it starts kind of kind of waving through your whole system. And then by the time you're done, it's actually just kind of fully kicking in all the way, and you're like, oh, cool. I just kind of started this truck that kind of took a while to get going, but now it's taking a while to get, and now training's ended, and now I'm trying to recover, but I'm really not that hungry for some reason because, I'm still stimulated. Oh, my heart's still kind of like pounding. I can feel it in my face, and you're like, okay, now it's really hard. And even if you do fall asleep, let's say you go home, you're like, well, I'll take melatonin and go to sleep, or I'll take Benadryl and go to sleep or something. It's like, I'm just going to kind of settle myself down. You're going to get what's called fragmented sleep, right? And that's what I actually that's one of my biggest gatekeepers in this physiology system I was just telling you about. Fragmented sleep is like, technically, yes, you slept 7 or 8 hours or whatever, but its value is not that high. It's not actually able to create very much recovery, right? Because you can't get into the places that you need to start clearing out all the stuff in your brain, to reset, to rebuild all these things that need to be rebuilt, right? They're disrupted. They're just like, you're just kind of resting, not really rebuilding and going through that full sleep process, right? So then it's like, okay, how can I get this, like a little bit of up, enough to get through my training, but, not like disrupt my sleep. We just created Euphoria for this exact reason, where it's a pre-workout that's designed to be short acting, to just fit your training window and not exist outside of it. So there's 75 mgs of caffeine, 150 mgs of dynamine, and then some Kana. And that kind of creates this triple threat system of like, okay, we're going to actually get started really fast. And we're going to ramp you up pretty quick. But it's nice and controllable. And then it's just this nice, steady, steady tell. And so that's pretty nice. But even if you're too you're like, oh man, I really just don't want to take a stim because I'm a little bit sensitive to it, which is it's kind of like me. I actually don't do well with stims very well, especially not at night. But you're an early morning guy, aren't you?
But yeah, I freaking love being up early in the morning, and I do terrible at night. Like I fall asleep
That's how
so
I am
quick.
too. Yeah, so I'm up at like 2, 3 in the morning every day. I just like it. Like it's so quiet, right? And
Yeah.
you just like it feels so good to get it ahead of the day too. And you're like, damn, I'm just on top of it. Feels like you're in control, whatever. But so, once it's this time, like for me and you, it's like, it's actually kind of midday, right? And then like stimulants don't, like, I'm not going to take a stimulant. I'm not going to take something like that. So if I had to go roll at like 4 p.m., I'm not taking the stim for that because I'll probably be asleep by 7, you know? So then you like, okay, how can I kind of get there? Um, so then this is where I love to use things like nectar, right? It's like I actually get this little, and I just made a video on this and we posted it, on the cholinergic systems and how it relates to dopamine. But you get this choline that comes in, and because of it, you don't actually raise your dopamine, but it becomes so much more efficient, right? It kind of brings everything else down and makes the dopamine feel more pronounced that you have. And that's like, cool, I have choline, I have dopamine, and I have this carnitine that's going to help me with these fatty acids. So it's kind of making the cost lower. So it's kind of like, hey, I'm not going to add more money to this, but I am going to lower the bill. And then it
Mm.
makes it feel easier because it's less to pay. So those are like, two ways to go about that. That I really like.
I love that. And I just started using Euphoria this week, which has been fantastic, by the way. And prior to, I'm really not a big fan of pre-workout because the amount of caffeine that they put in there is so insane for me
Yeah.
personally. And so I would just only use like one double shot of espresso, which has about 90 to 100 milligrams of caffeine. But then like I would hit that workout and then I'd kind of feel that crash of the caffeine a couple hours later. So then I'd have a second one just to kind of like pick me up through the workday. And so this week, since I've been using Euphoria, which has been fantastic, it feels like you mentioned, like the boost in alertness, the boost in energy that I need is more contained to the training window. And I don't really feel like the caffeine crash happen 1 hour after I'm done training and I'm just amped up for the full hour after training while I'm still trying to eat breakfast and stuff. It feels
Yeah.
much more contained to the training session, which has been fantastic. And then the other benefit has just been like since I started using that, I've had a lower need for caffeine throughout the day, which I don't know if I would ever say like I'm going to stop drinking coffee at any point in my life, but I definitely know that it's better to drink a little bit less and just be less just amped up sympathetic all the time. So the Euphoria pre-workout has been fantastic.
Man, that means a lot. I'm really glad you're liking it, and that's the whole point. It's got a couple layers that we built into that. But one of the big ones is that stim profile. It's like, hey, let's still raise up the arousal for you, but let's not go crazy. Let's try to contain it right into this training window, and it works great. Like I'll take it, and then like sometimes I'll take a quick nap right after training. Actually, just like be like, cool, I'm starving, I'm ready to go, and then I just feel great the rest of the day.
Nice. You mentioned Nectar, which a couple years ago when we first got connected, Nectar was one of the first, like my essentially my first venture into anything injectable supplements, injectable pre-training, recovery, all that stuff. And it has been absolutely fantastic. And it's a combination of L-Carnitine and Citicoline. I know you kind of briefly broke down those a little bit, specifically for grapplers that want to have better energy utilization and better focus in a training session. How would you begin implementing Nectar for a grappler?
Um, well, you know what? I would actually step back a little bit and say, um, what kind of physiology do you need to be a good grappler, right? And then let's try to like fill in the gaps to say like, because it's going to be different. Because for you, it's like, dude, Nectar might be a godsend, right? And you get in there, you're like, man, this is the exact gap that I needed filled, right? But for another person, like, oh, that was cool, but like, man, I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit more dramatic. When for them, it's like maybe they take something like DADA and it just like blows their mind, you know? And so there's a couple things with that. It's like, so if you look at a jujitsu athlete, right, I actually think this is the most difficult sport. Like I think jujitsu and MMA in general, they're the most difficult sports, which is like, I love coaching it because of that. Because essentially, I mean, what you're talking about is like, I'm playing chess while like I have so much lactate, I can't breathe, my oxygen's low, right? And like I'm not only playing chess, but this is like for my life. I could get hit in the face, I could get my arm broken, I could like, and you're like, okay, this is crazy, right? So there's a lot of systems at play there, which makes it super fun. But so what I would start with is I would break this down a little bit into how does like my energy systems in general, like my mitochondrial function need to function to be an elite, jujitsu athlete. And then a little bit more on like, hey, where does like my neuromodulator tone / where does my neurophysiology need to be, And so when you're looking at it from like a mitochondrial / like energy systems type of thing, it's like, okay, so the whoever like has the least amount of lactate in their system is probably going to have a benefit, right? Like if you're like just on fire and you can't breathe and your oxygen debt is like through the roof, you're probably not going to think clearly. So that's kind of what we're going to call a gatekeeper for jujitsu, right? Is like I think that's ground one. Like we have to have great energy systems. And so if you look at that, it's like, cool. So when we're looking at energy systems, we have really like the phospholcreatine, we have our glucose, and we have fat. Like that's kind of like the three things that you can use to create ATP, right? And so with the phospholcreatine, there's a lot that you can do about that, but that's a lot bigger thing to get into. And there's a lot. I mean, take some creatine and do some creatine work, like do some plyometric works. And that could be like a 3-hour conversation on its own. So that's all I'm going to say there. But what really, and it's not really a creatine sport anyway. Like you're not like a creatine sport is something we call like football, right? Where it's like 4 seconds, 40-second break, 4 second, 40-second break, right? That's a creatine sport. But this is not like, it's not, you got 5, 10, sometimes even 20 minutes, which I know is kind of rare, but like, they go for a while. 5 minutes is a long time when you're rolling or like,
Yeah.
when you're fighting. It's a long time. And then it's like, cool, 1 minute break, go again, right? So it's like, okay, so now I actually have to be able to recover quick too. So I have to have a liver that's going to take care of any lactate and move it quick, right? So not only do I want it to be as low as possible, but I need to have a liver that's going to process it super quick. So then we look at it, we say, okay, so fat, the more I can rely on fats, the less I rely on glucose. And like, because the more glucose you rely on, the more lactate is possible to make, right? We go through that whole system. So it's like, okay, so how can I get as good at burning fat as I possibly can? And that's where carnitine comes in. It actually it really steers your body towards like, hey, let's use more fat. And that's why we get the glycogen sparing. That's where we get the energy benefits that you feel from it. It's like, cool, now there's glucose available, which, is super nice. And when we have a lot of glucose available and lactate is low, we're a little more spry. We're a little more, like, oh, I'm willing to give a high effort. I can push a higher contraction. I'm stronger. I'm quicker, right? So that's one side of it. Is like, cool, we can kind of handle the fatty acids through there. And then with glucose, you obviously get the kind of the side benefits from carnitine already, but this is where DADA fits in, right? So DADA changes the way that you're metabolizing glucose, right? Because really simply, there's like basically only two ways glucose can go as far as pathways. It could become lactate, or it could become pyruvate. And go down through this oxidative phosphorylation path, right? So one way produces lactate and like 2 ATP. The other way produces 32 ATP, 16 times more ATP and no lactate, right? So it's like, this is obviously more efficient, right? And so that is like turning on your gene saying, hey, we're actually going to inhibit this pathway all the way, and we're just going to focus on this. So when you get that combination together, it's like, whew, that's you kind of released your gatekeepers in a sense, which is kind of cool. And then you step up onto that neuromodulator side where it's like, okay, I need to feel clean. I need to feel like, you want the right things to feel important. You don't want to be distracted by like what someone in the crowd might be saying, or like, some random thoughts coming up. That's like, that's not where you want to be. So we raise up your choline tone, and that helps to push all that aside. It's like, whoop, that's why nicotine, makes it feel like you can zone in really nice and easy. It's like we're getting dopamine because of the boost of choline, right? So we add in choline here, and we start getting this like nice clear signaling. So you get this combination of like, cool, like I'm not being held back by my energy systems anymore, and I have this additional focus, right? So that combination of like, which is nectar and DADA, essentially pretty hard to beat, right? Like that becomes like a little bit of a cheat code.
That is an amazing explanation, because that just gives so much context to how I feel anytime I use the combinations of nectar and DADA whenever I'm training. And I remember when I first started using those, I remember feeling like, oh man, like the out of 6 minute rounds, the first 4 were great, and the last 2 were sometimes like a coin toss. Like some training days, those last 2 rounds were like, man, that's the best I ever felt. Other times it'd be like, that was the worst I ever felt. I should have like called it quits at the fourth round. And once I started implementing those things, and kind of like what you were saying, it did feel like from an energetics perspective, I had a little bit more to give in those last few training rounds, where the overall, instead of getting 4 out of 6 quality training rounds, I got 6 out of 6 quality training rounds. And then the other thing that was pretty cool too is that because it is glycogen sparing, I also felt like I didn't have that dead noodle arm feeling that a lot of grapplers get when fatigue sets in. Like if it took a long scramble to get to someone's back, or if I had to work really hard to pass their guard, I still had some juice to really put some force into a submission, which especially for competitors is huge. You don't want to do all that work and then not have any energy left to actually like seal the deal and finish the match. So the combination of nectar and DADA has been just absolutely incredible. One thing I know that you've talked about a lot, and have talked about how it's important to manage, and not managing it well can really derail a grappler's progress, and that's oxidative stress. So can you break down what oxidative stress is, and when is it appropriate to try to combat that as much as possible, and when are the best times to just kind of let oxidative stress do its thing?
Yeah, no, for sure. So, I mean, oxidative stress is inevitable, right? Like just by breathing, by existing, like you're creating oxidative stress to some degree. Your metabolism's creating oxidative stress, right? And whenever we speed up our metabolism, whether that's through working out, whether it's taking a stim, whether it's through like drinking, or like anything that really causes damage, whatever. I mean, there's a million things like your body functioning causes oxidative stress, right? And then you have this oxidative stress and where it came from, and how it originated can end up being a big signal to telling your body like, hey, do we like want to adapt from this or do we not? Right? Like, because we have this, like, we kind of have like the way that, I was telling you, I just built my own physiology simulator, which I'm super excited about. And the way I kind of layered this out is I have what's called redox island, which is like handling all that. And you kind of have your plasticity, your mitochondrial, and then your inflammation. And that's what I call layer one of biology, essentially. Right. And when you get, and so the type of oxidative stress that you have, how much and how long it lasts are going to decide like, hey, do I want to do something about this or not? Right? Because if you go train and you handle it and you have enough glutathione in your system to be able to manage it, put the fire out, it gets passed on to plasticity island and basically says, hey, let's adapt from this. Like, hey, remember this thing, tag it, learn it. The thing that dopamine told us, yep, we're going to throw that in here. Cool. BDNF, all that fun stuff, right? Memory. Cool. I got better. I improved my skill. Right. But the problem that occurs is if let's say you get to the end of the day, you sleep and there's still oxidative stress remaining, right? So my rule of thumb is if the stress lasts longer than about 24 hours, then it's probably not the stress that you want anymore. That's when it becomes pathological, more or less. It's not always the case, but more or less it becomes pathological. And so if if it starts building up to the point where you can't manage it, you start getting some negatives that occur from the oxidative stress. It starts creating damage. And there's a lot of things that start to happen from it. And it's pretty easy to, I guess I could give it even a couple of things of like, hey, these are the symptoms you should be aware of, right? Because one of the things that will happen is this process called S-glutathionylation. Right. And when this happens, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's basically NRF2, which is just little gene. It won't get into that. I have a video on it if anyone cares to really know.
It's a great video. I watched it last week or yesterday. It was really, really good stuff.
I made a series. Yeah, I'm making series that done like a lot of these high level stuff. If anyone cares to watch it, then great. If not, then it's okay. Life goes on either way. But it's there if someone wants it. I'll be coming out with a lot of stuff there. But basically, NRF2 comes on and it says, hey, like we're going into survival mode. Let's protect everything because we have a lot of oxidative stress right now. So we're going to start, it literally kind of just puts like bubbles on a whole bunch of things and says, let's protect it. Let's keep this from being damaged from stress, which is great when you're exercising. Right? But if that lasts too long, they put these bubbles over these protein cysteines. And those cysteines are used for so many things. What's funny is those cysteines, we actually need to be able to create glutathione and regenerate glutathione to be able to put it out. And so it actually can, if it's on too long, you actually push down your whole redox systems and you're incapable of it, right? It also brings down other tones like you can't produce dopamine when there's too much S-glutathionylation. Like it impacts so many things with a spider web of things that it just starts to impact. So you'll notice that you're more tired, like you're less motivated, you're like, a little bit irritable, like that kind of body ache, fevery kind of thing. That's like, hey, this has become pathological and it's lasted longer than it needs to create an adaptation. It's time to get help, right? And that's where, and the fastest way to deal with that is, hey, we got glutathione, right? I'm just actually going to take glutathione and deal with this thing that I need glutathione to deal with, right? It's like my body doesn't have enough. I overtrain just a little bit. I'm calling for help, going to inject this glutathione, and it brings it back down really quickly, especially if you're staying on top of it, brings it down really quickly. You get right back into your cycle. You start producing more of your own glutathione, like right back on it, right? But those are the first things. Like if you're normally excited to go to jiu-jitsu and you like jiu-jitsu and you don't want to go to jiu-jitsu, it's probably a sign, right? Like if you all, man, it's so funny, but you kind of get into the state too where you're like, man, I'm tired, but I just like can't sleep. Like that's another one where it's like, hey, our redox systems are probably pretty overwhelmed. You start kind of getting this feeling too of like if you ever had it where you're like, I can't get my eyes to focus because I'm like so tired, or like that I can't do that critical thinking because I'm so tired. Like, you kind of have that weird kind of head fog thing going on. That's again like, hey, we're probably probably let need to let your astrocytes catch up, let your glutathione systems catch up. Little glutathione's a safe bet there. Um, but again, you don't want to go too far, because if you eliminate the stress right as it's happening, and it's, it never gets a chance to even cause an adaptation, then your body starts to see that as like, hey, that wasn't stressful enough to adapt. That's not enough for me to care about to make any changes, right? So we're kind of, you don't want to overdo it, but for most of us, it's probably kind of hard to overdo at this point,
Right.
like,
Right.
but that's a good one too. Like, utilizing things like glutathione, and NAD plus kind of fits right in there too. One of them, NAD plus supports the process of creating glutathione, is one of its jobs. So like, you get enough NAD plus, you're producing your own glutathione, which a lot of people think is like a little bit more natural of a way to like support your natural systems. Kind of, I don't know, like, I think they're both really useful tools, right thing for the right time.
So with all that in mind, say like, well, to back up a little bit, I've done a few different consult calls over the past few months, and a common trend sometimes that will happen is people reach out and they say like, man, like I watch your videos, I do the workouts, I go to jujitsu. So it's not like a quote unquote disciplined thing where like I'm not working hard enough or I'm not mentally tough enough. But for like 6 months, my progress has just been like completely stalled. And sure, maybe there's some things that are like, yeah, maybe your nutrition could be optimized a little bit better. Maybe there's some like stuff you're doing in the gym that could be optimized a little bit better. But it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, once oxidative stress reaches this peak, it's like adaptation really isn't going to be happening a whole lot, because you don't make progress off of what you do. You only make progress off of what you can recover from. So in a situation like that, where someone feels like they've been in this state, or they've just plateaued for a long time, and it's not necessarily like a mindset thing or a discipline thing, like I just got to get to the gym more, is pulling a lever like glutathione something you would suggest they start out with? Like, hey, let's clear out the oxidative stress, get to a good place, and then kind of see what ways we can optimize training, what ways we can optimize nutrition, and go from there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think you could. I don't think that's a bad idea. I think it would just depend. I hate that I always say that, but it depends. Because your ability to adapt, whether you want to get smarter, whether you want to, like, I don't know, be better at jujitsu, get stronger, hypertrophy, whatever, it's kind of this like, can my redox systems handle this, and can my mitochondrial systems handle it? Right? It's like, do I have the capacity to put out the fire, and then do I have like the currency to be able to pay the cost of the adaptation? Right? And if you have both and you get the green lights on both, you're going to continue to progress. Right? And so now it's like, okay, how can I, like, and you get to a point where you're going to reach kind of like what your first natural peak, if you will, right? Where it's like, hey, if I don't do anything, if I don't change my lifestyle, if I don't do any kind of new supplementation or something, this is just kind of like where my recovery ceiling is at. Right. And so now I have to look at, is there anything I can change in my lifestyle? Which I always think that's the first way to go. It's like, hey, like, maybe like, what are you doing before bed? Right. It's like, are you on your phone? Are you falling asleep to the TV? Like, it's like, hey, let's, like, if you're a person that needs the TV or needs the radio or needs a podcast or needs your phone to be able to fall asleep, take care of that first.
Mm.
Like, let's do that. Let's get better at that. And if there's anxieties there or whatever, it's like, hey, let's bring that down. Like, that's what I call threat load, right? Like, your threat load's too high. Like, you're basically, your system's thinking that it needs to be prepared for something when it doesn't, right? And you need to retrain that. It's like, yes, everything's actually okay. I'm going to create this routine that tells me everything's okay. So when I do it, I can fall asleep, right? It might be like, I'm going to go outside. I'm going to go look at the moon or the stars, or I'm going to journal. I'm going to do, whatever combination of things that you're like, this is bedtime, right? That excludes, that's not a word, excludes TV, phone, and anything that can distract you. That's distracting you until you're tired, not settling down, right? So I'd say, let's look at the lifestyle first. Just make sure it doesn't have to be perfect, right? We're not trying to make a perfect bedtime routine, perfect morning routine. You don't got to do that. But like, let's make sure that it's not your limiting factor, right? Let's make sure it's like, and sometimes you can't do anything about it, and that's okay. But look at that first. Then I would say, okay, well, let's look at how can we handle mitochondrial systems versus which one is it coming from, right? And then you can kind of go back to it and say, well, what kind of, like, what else am I experiencing? Am I experiencing fatigue? Am I getting sick a lot? Do I feel like like what else is going on? And you can kind of end up bringing that down to, in my opinion, like if you just want something really simple, you're like, man, I don't know if I need nectar or data or iridescence or peak or whatever, those kind of all the things that are out there. Like just start with carnitine. Like carnitine's a great way just to give your mitochondria like more. Right? It's like I'm going to take the tox off my liver and I'm going to lower the bill, and this is a good place to start. I'm just going to use like a little carnitine every day, like just 1 cc of carnitine every day. That's a great place to start. You will notice a difference from that. And then you can say, okay, man, I did notice a difference. Okay, I'm getting a little bit better. I'm getting to the end of my training and I have more energy. Like you should have energy at the end of your training, or you probably went too far and you're probably not going to make a positive adaptation from it. Right. And so, and a lot of like nobody here is going to go, oh, I'll train less. So it's like, let's just like, let's make sure that you survive it better. So let's use carnitine, let's use DADA, those kind of things. I think carnitine's like an easy, hard to miss thing for people. It's like, you're not going to get worse from carnitine. And then it's like, do I need glutathione? Carnitine, glutathione, if you just do those two, you are going to improve, especially as like a natural athlete. We're like, hey, I don't want to get into AAS. I don't want to get into growth hormone or peptides or all that crazy stuff that people are doing. But I do want to like boost my systems because this is important to me and I do want to get better. But I also care about my body. I want the longevity. These are going to do both, right? This is a no miss. Like, easy things to add that you really can't mess up.
Hey, real quick, if you want to become a jacked and dangerous grappler this year and you want to consistently feel and perform your best both in the gym and on the mat, you need to take a much deeper look at your health. You may not even realize that there could be some serious health markers and things going on with your hormones that are holding you back from being able to get brutally strong, pack on slabs of muscle, and improve your grappling athleticism. That's why I partnered with Merrick Health, because I wanted to get on track to fully optimize my performance and my health. They run lab tests that check over 100 different biomarkers, and by working with one of their expert coaches, I was able to get a personalized roadmap that tackled everything from supplementation, nutrition, hormone optimization, really everything that I needed to start seeing results and improving my performance in just a couple of weeks. You can get the exact same blood panels that I get and the ones that I order for all of my athletes, plus get 10% off your initial assessment by going to the link in the description below and using code SETLAGE at checkout. That's merrickhealth.com, code SETLAGE to get 10% off your initial assessment. Now, back to the show.
So with the combo of daily L-Carnitine and glutathione, how would you time those depending on the type of training day? So for example, a lot of guys listening to this, they train jiu-jitsu 3 to 4 times a week. They go to the gym 3 to 4 times a week. That means that some of those days they're lifting heavy and rolling hard in the same day. So would you use a carnitine before both sessions, or just, look at the schedule and say like, hey, on this day, jiu-jitsu is going to be a little bit more important, so I'll just lift. I'll take, euphoria before my lift, but I'll save my carnitine for that jiu-jitsu session, or vice versa, and then save something like glutathione for as like break glass in case of emergency kind of thing when the oxidative stress gets too high.
Yeah, no, that's a great question as far as like practical application here. I think this is actually where it gets fun and you get to kind of trial and error this a little bit, because some people are going to feel like lifting weights is way more taxing. And then there's going to be some people are like, I just kind of lift and get out, so like, it's like, cool. Like depending on what you want the boost for is like, that's where let's place it there, right? Like if it's somebody who is, they've lifted their whole life already, and now they're doing jujitsu kind of secondary, like it's the second thing they've added, and now it's like, now I want to get really good at jujitsu, but I'm already good at lifting, I just need to maintain this. I would use it before jujitsu, right? It's like I can already manage my lifting. It's not going crazy. I'm not trying to get stronger. But if you're a jujitsu athlete who's like, man, I feel like if I add strength training in, then I'll be a better jujitsu athlete, which you will. If anyone's listening, you will. Definitely, like strength training, you should do that. Then it's like, hey, maybe let's add it to that to lower the cost of that. Cause there's going to be like this initial, oh crap, I'm sore, I'm tired, this is exhausting. What is this? My brain's freaking out. Like, is this a threat? And it's like, hey, let's pull some of that down. Let's use carnitine before the gym. And then you can always, do exactly what you're saying. It's like, maybe I'll do this a little before each and just kind of mess around with it.
Gotcha. And so then with glutathione, is that something you would regularly schedule in, or just on an as-needed basis if that oxidative stress gets too high?
If you're lifting weights and doing jujitsu, so you kind of have like somewhere between 8 and 10 total training sessions, you could say, per week. I would probably use glutathione. I don't. You could have like exemplary redox skills, like genetics, and manage your life perfectly, and maybe you don't need it, but you're probably gonna bet like if you're that guy that's doing 8 to 10 sessions total, 4 or 5 of each, uh, you should probably use some glutathione. Like that's probably a little more than, and that's probably where it becomes your limiting factor is like the reason you're not adapting from your training anymore and getting better.
Gotcha. Is there a certain dosage or amount that you would recommend? You recommended 1 cc or 1 ml of carnitine. I think I'm remembering that correctly. That could be a daily thing before jujitsu or before lifting, depending on which one you want to emphasize a little bit more. For glutathione, is there a recommendation you have for where someone should start with that, and kind of how often per week?
Yeah, again, it kind of glutathione is going to be a much more. It depends, like, because if you're already like, man, I'm adapting from training pretty well, but it's kind of like if I add one more thing, then it kind of all falls apart and I get sick or I like, you know, lose it. Then it's like, hey, maybe just need a little bit. Maybe let's try like 400 to 600 milligrams, per week, just one shot. It's good. But if you're like, man, I'm this is like my peak time. I'm training hard for a competition. I'm working. I'm training. I'm going to school, whatever. And I'm like, training like maybe twice a week at something a little more aggressive, like 6 or 800, you know?
Gotcha. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Um, Obviously, jujitsu and MMA, those are weight class sports where body recomposition can be super beneficial. And just, Dave Tate has classically said, like, you can't flex fat and you can't flex bone, so you might as well add more to yourself that you can flex. So when
Yeah.
working with a weight class sport athlete, specifically combat sports, because I know you do a lot of stuff in bodybuilding and powerlifting, which those are also weight class sports, but specifically for combat sport athletes, how would you implement some of these things and maybe even some nutritional stuff for like a 6 to 12 week recomp phase or sorry, 6 to 12 month recomp phase where someone is looking at like, okay, I'm not super fat, but I definitely have some body fat to lose. I already have some muscle. I'm trying to gain some more, but I don't want to move out of my weight class. How would you structure that for someone?
No, that's a really good question. And again, it depends, right? It
Right.
depends on a lot of where you're coming from and where the trajectories are going. But for the most part, I think what I would start with for most people is, hey, let's get off some body fat first, right? Let's slow, not at a such a speed that it's actually hurting your jujitsu and all that, but it's like, let's get rid of some of the body fat, mostly for the benefit of like, hey, let's improve insulin sensitivity to the point that we actually can build some muscle tissue. Because if you're kind of like at that, like, well, I'm kind of skinny fat or like I'm a little chubby, I could definitely be like leaner. It's like if you try to build muscle, you're probably not going to do it super efficiently, right? So it's like, okay, let's lose that body fat first. Let's get pretty lean. And lean is just for you. You don't have to be like 8% body fat. You don't like just get to a point and you'll know when insulin sensitivity gets better because you'll finish training and you'll be like starving. It's like you're
Mm,
actually starving again. You're like, I need carbohydrates now. I need glucose now, like I am, it's great. And then once you get to that point, it's like, okay, like, maybe it's been like 8 to 12 weeks, just kind of cutting down. Once you get past that point, you're going to start getting into bodybuilding territory where it's like, well, I'm actually getting kind of weak now. Like my training sucks. I've been in a deficit for too long. And now it's, go the other way. And then you just kind of have to be, uh, you want to, so as you're cutting, like really preserve that muscle tissue, right? And like as we're talking about, what makes up so much of your muscle tissue? Glycogen. How can we spare it? Carnitine, right? And what also drives fat oxidation? Carnitine. So it's like it's
mm.
perfect for it's perfect just for that. So like again, carnitine, if like in a deficit, it's hard to beat, right? Like that's a really good way to go. Maybe like 8 to 12 weeks, try something like 500 to, if you want to be a little more aggressive, like 1,000 milligrams of carnitine every day, be in a deficit, your performance will be great. Your performance will be great. Like your muscle tissue will be preserved, excuse me, very efficiently lose body fat. And it's great.
So one of the things that you've created is Nectar, which is L-carnitine and citicoline together, and you have carnitine by itself. For specifically for like body recomp, you're saying, just the L-carnitine is going to be great for that. And then would you just save the nectar for when they kind of come back out of that deficit and are a little bit more at maintenance and they're kind of pushing those training sessions a little bit harder at jujitsu or in the gym?
Yeah, I mean, so if you really wanted like, hey, I'm gonna do an aggressive cut, like I'm gonna go 8 to 12 weeks here. I really want to lose like, 12 to 15 pounds of body fat. I'm like gonna be shredded, Maybe do something like start with carnitine in the morning and just have it as like this kind of base in the morning, and then you use nectar pre-workout. And now you kind of have two sources of carnitine, one that's gonna be specifically for your training, the other one that's kind of just supporting fat oxidation throughout the day.
Gotcha. Okay. Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and then all I was gonna say is once you've hit that point, and you'll get to a point where it almost starts to become intolerable. I don't think it's really worth pushing past that like intolerability point. That's like bodybuilding, right? It's like, hey, now I'm just like I'm really starting to eat into my muscle tissue. Like I'm starting to use like I'm breaking down amino acids and stuff. Now I'm gonna get to the point where let's like, let's flip this around and as long as you don't eat like crap and you don't you keep your diet nice and clean, you do it slowly, you'll add tissue really quickly. It's going to be really susceptible to it.
Nice. You mentioned mitochondria, and something that I've been seeing a lot of, and I'm just kind of just dipping my toe into this area. I'm still like a super noob in this area, is like all these different things that we can do to enhance our mitochondria. So L-carnitine is definitely one of those things. Methylene blue is something that's been getting really popular lately. But then there's also stuff like SS31, SLU. Exactly. Yeah. So where would you see those applications, or where would you see the application of those particular mitochondrial peptides and enhancers for grappling athletes?
I mean, man, those are great. They all can be great for the right purposes and intents, and there's like different ways to define mitochondrial health. Mitochondrial, like there's different parts that really can define it. Like you can look at it from a fuel flexibility. It's like, can it use fat? Can it use glucose? Right? It's like, okay, if they can use both, that's probably a pretty healthy mitochondria. Then you can look at other things. It's like, how's the stress signaling? Like, can we receive this message quickly? And if all of a sudden we have to switch from fat to glucose or glucose to fat, how quickly can we switch? Right. And then it's like, we have the electron transport chain. It's like, can we receive light? Can we get the benefits of sunlight, pass it down the chain? And then like we kind of have this thing called cardiolipin, which is the membrane that exists around the mitochondria. It's like how healthy that is like really it's going to have a lot to do with like its conductivity and how well it's going to hand things off and create energy as well. And so there's a lot of different factors, and they're all, man, there's so many fun ones. So if you look at it from a fuel flexibility kind of standpoint, it's like, can my mitochondria use both, which is a big one of the biggest, right? That's like, carnitine DADA. It's going to be really hard to beat that, right? Now you have MOTS-c. MOTS-c is starting to get popular, which feels kind of random, but it's starting to get popular right now. And that's one that has a lot to do with the way that the mitochondria is able to flex between those two as far as signaling. It's like, how quickly can my stress signal? So when you're a kid, you have a ton of MOTS-c, right? You can switch back and forth. That's why you eat something and then you forget to eat for 8 hours and you eat a whole bunch and then run out. It's like you can just switch, right? It's like, yeah, I always have energy for something. That's MOTS-c stuff. So MOTS-c is great. MOTS-c's awesome for the right job, right? And you have SS31, which is a little like, it's a little controversial. I've seen it be a little bit controversial because you can overuse this one, right? So again, when you're a kid, your cardiolipin is just this. It's literally just fatty acids that line the mitochondria, and it's extremely important for the mitochondria's health for protections. Like if like lipid peroxidation is the process of when oxidative stress gets too high, it actually starts breaking down, oxidizing that fatty acid and breaks it down. And that's where we actually start to get things like, like all sorts of random things. So really common in dopamine neurons, which can end up leading to things like Parkinson's, like, because dopamine burns really hot. It's like, it's a big one that can get a lot of lipid peroxidation, stuff like that. So that the mitochondrial membrane, if it has lipid peroxidation, peroxidation, if it's damaged, it actually starts sending signals. Like that actually creates its own signal saying we're damaged. And sometimes that can create a process, which is not always bad, called autophagy. It's a good thing, but too much cell death, right? It starts going through like cell death and whatever. Now, the controversy is with SS31, all it's doing is coming in and stabilizing it. It's like kind of rebuilding it, stabilizing, making sure you have a nice cardiolipin layer, which sounds great, right? But if you go too far, the controversy with it is, well, if I make it so strong, we actually start sending a signal to the cell that it shouldn't die even when it should, right? It doesn't really give it the ability to flex, right? And so now it's like, okay, we actually got some like miscoded proteins and we should cut this down. Like this cell's done, but it's like, no, look, our cardiolipin's still good, so keep it going. It's like, oh, now we're getting mutated RNA, proteins out there, and that's can lead to cancer. And so you hear people talk about like, oh, cardiolipin causes cancer, and it's like, well, I mean, it depends, right? Because it does. But the benefit is your most mitochondrial dense organs, brain, heart, kidneys, liver. What do we see damaged most on like bodybuilders and athletes? Brain, heart, right? So so for me, I'm like, obviously use it with caution. This is your own decision to make, right? But I think by the time you're in your 30s, 40s, you trained really hard, you're just older. It's hard for me to imagine that like just by running a cycle of that you're going to push it so far to the point that you're past even what a kid's at. Right. Like you have to push that pretty far. And when we're seeing cancer doses, we're seeing people run at like 40 milligrams a day, like pretty high doses for a really long time. And even then we see people just have like kind of actually miraculous, like heart healing events and stuff. It's pretty cool. It's an interesting one. It's just good to know about, so these mitochondrial, they all kind of come at a different angle. And what I would like recommend to do is first, like, always diagnose yourself first. Like, like that's probably too heavy of a word, but assess yourself first, right? Don't diagnose actually. Assess yourself first. And like, okay, based on this, and like, I'm like, when I have my app out, this will be really easy because it'll assess it for you. So, anyone listening, use the app. It'll help you assess really quick and it'll just apply the right thing to you. It's awesome. But for now, kind of assess yourself and say, okay, based on all of this, like, this is how I'm feeling. These are the symptoms I'm getting. This is what I want to feel like, right? And then try to fill the gap, not just take some random thing because it sounds cool. It's like, wow, I saw like, this influencer use SS31 and MOTS-c. It's like, man, maybe it was a miracle worker for them, but it doesn't mean it's going to be for you, So make sure you take time to assess, what do I actually need? What do I actually want? Does this fit the bill? And even if you just take the time to do that, you're going to probably be right a little more often.
I love it. Thank you so much for breaking all that down. And what you said about assessing yourself speaks a lot to this idea that I bring up, not every podcast episode, but almost every podcast episode, and trying to help people understand that the things we do to our body are not always as simple as just like pushing a button one time, like, oh, I want to build muscle, so I push the hypertrophy button. But it's more so like a switcher board in a music studio where everything has all these levels and dials, and depending on what sounds you want, you would change the levels and dials. But if you want a different sound, you still need to tweak those. And it sounds like what you're saying is like, hey, take an assessment of where your physiology is at, what your training goals are, what you want to, maybe I'd go as far to say like maybe even your risk tolerance for certain things, and then try to find the right symphony of supplements, nutritional habits, lifestyle things that kind of get you that sound that you want. Is that correct in assuming what you're saying?
Yeah, that's a great one. I mean, when I was kind of talking, I think I was talking to you about this before we started recording, but everybody's kind of got these set points, right? It's like based on the way that you live your life, you've kind of settled into these set points, right? And these set points can be anything you can think of, like physiologically, you can think of it. It can be your dopamine tone, it can be your RLS, it can be, your redox system, your whatever, your plasticity, BDNF, whatever, right? You have these set points. And it's like, hey, based on the way that I'm living my life right now, these are my set points, for better or for worse, wherever they're at. And whatever you're going to do, there's nothing that you can't do that's going to cause you to have a deviation from that set point, right? So now it's like, I'm here, cool, I'm here, but this is my normal, and this is where I'm at right this second. So now there's a cost, right? There's a cost to bring it back down because it will come back down, right? no matter what. It's like, okay, so there's a cost to bring it back down. Am I prepared to pay that cost? Right. And because of this, who had to pay that cost? Right. And that's where you kind of get the switchboard, like spider web effect. Is like this one thing moved, but the cost had to be paid from here. Like something had to bring it back. Like if you spike your dopamine with Adderall or like, I don't know, whatever, MDMA or something, something or whatever, it's like, you spike it. Something has to metabolize it. Something has to be able to put out the fire, right? Something is then going to cause an adaptation because that event existed, right? That's like, that could be hypertrophy. That's exactly how hypertrophy works. Gosh. But that's also how trauma works, right? Like that's where PTSD comes from. It's like, because, okay, so I experienced this event. Was it important? Yes, it was important. Dopamine says it was important. That's dopamine's whole job, right? Like the whole DART 32 is like, is this important or not? Dopamine's there, phasic. Okay, yep, it's important. Okay, it's important. Okay, is it important enough, right? And then it's like, okay, what kind of damage did this cause? Okay, oof, that was stressful. We don't want to cause that damage again. This is scary, right? And now I'm going to adapt to that. Or like, hey, because of this, we should stay alert. We should stay alert more often because if we're not alert, we might miss this, right? So let's just actually kind of stay a little bit more ramped up, right? It's like, so everything you do and everything you take and everything, it's like, it's going to have a cause. It's going to cause some kind of deviation. It's like, is it the right deviation? Right. And if you don't know, then don't do it. Or if you're not prepared to like pay the cost of it, then don't do it. Because when you ever hear people say like, oh, take that healing peptide like BPC and TB 500 and stuff, like, oh, you heard, just take some BPC. It's like, that has a cost. You know, do you know what it is? Because people say like, there's no real side effects. It does. Like, it absolutely does. It has a cost, right? Same with even growth hormone, right? It's like, that's one that gets used all the time. I love growth hormone. I think it's great, but it does have a cost, right? So are you prepared to pay the cost?
I love it. I love it. Well, Jake, this has been absolutely fantastic. Before we close out, I had some rapid fire questions. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to give a rapid fire answer, but I've been talking about you for years now amongst like my training partners and the guys that I roll with and the guys that I lift with. And I told them you were coming on the podcast. And they were
All right.
freaking geeked, and they had quite a few questions for you. So, this question is from my boy Joban, specifically about L-Carnitine. He said, "Is L-Carnitine something that needs to be cycled on and off? And if doing double training sessions, should a grappler use L-Carnitine before both sessions?"
That's a really good question. There's going to be a lot of those questions with these like aminos and these peptides. Does it need to be cycled on or off? Now, like, does it need to be? I guess nothing needs to be, right? But should it is there I'm guessing the question is more like, can it, like, is there some kind of optimization? Is there some kind of like fatigue syndrome that happens from overuse of carnitine, where if I take a break, I'll get a better benefit from it, that type of thing? I'm guessing that's the question. And, this is one that I truly think that no, not really. If the only thing I think that you could get uh, from taking time off of it, is you kind of get that novelty effect of it again. Where you're like, hey, yeah, I'm going to start carnitine again. And it's kind of fun. So I think that part of it is like, yeah, you probably should like cycle it. I think there's those times too where, maybe you're just about to do a cut and then you feel like you kind of have this extra superpower because it's like, man, I got carnitine with me now. It's different. It's going to be different this time. And it is. It's like, cool. Yeah, it is different. Like you do have an extra buddy here with you. It's like, yeah. So, depends how you look on it. Now, what was the second part? Using it 2 times in a day?
Right.
Um, Man, like I see a lot of people use it, and I've had a lot of people use it 2 times a day, and I love that. I think it's a great way, especially if you're in a deficit and there's a lot of pressure on fatty acids being built. You're training hard. Absolutely, twice a day is a great way to split it up.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm sure he's gonna love that answer and hopefully get started with carnitine here pretty soon. Next question from Zach. Zach is someone that him and I have he's my oldest training partner. So we started lifting around the same time, been lifting a long time, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, all that stuff. And he's been very interested in a lot of the stuff that you've formulated and the stuff that you've created through Better Through Biology and Euphoria. And his question was, when someone's like going from the starting line, is there something you would recommend they start with first? It sounds like you've mentioned like they could start with carnitine first. They could start with something like a DADA first or glutathione, but just as like of course it always depends, but like as I guess like a more broad recommendation of a starting point. Is there a certain supplement or a certain compound that you would recommend?
As far as like what's going to make the biggest difference in a normal person, if I just had to like throw that out at this point, I'd actually say Euphoria. I think
Mm,
Euphoria is probably the biggest difference maker because we're so, and I was kind of having this, and I'm going to try not to get too philosophical with this one, but a big problem that we have right now is there's so much demand on our neuromodulator systems to be alert to like, this is important. And I don't want to blame anybody, but it's like, we get this event and it's some tragic event that happens to somebody, right? Like, and it's far away, like, like with whatever's going on. And like the way that it gets presented a lot of the times, is like, you need to care about this or you're a bad person. Like, if you don't take this seriously, this thing that happened to this person on the other side of the world, like, you need to care about that and you need to do something about that, and it's like, I do care about that, but not everything's yours to carry, you know? And,
right.
and so we have such the stress, like we're supposed to carry on the weight of the world, right? And it's heavy, and and so to combat that, we use so many stims, right? It's like
Mhm.
stim, caffeine, nicotine, like whatever, like or even cannabis, just to like, I need to forget about it because this is too much. Like, I can't handle more, you know. And the thing I love so much about Euphoria, bringing this back, is like it's a specific cause for a specific thing, and I love the whole brand of Euphoria. And we got a lot of cool products coming out with there. A lot of them are kind of aimed at gatekeepers, like we were talking about. It's going to be a little bit different of a supplement company. It's going to be next gen. um, but what's cool about it is like, hey, let's be specific. Let's care. Let's make the things that are important. Like, let's make the things that I actually care about. Let's make them mine, and let's leave everything else alone. Let's be specific. So our whole motto at that is like, solve for X, which is why we have the cool little Y, Y for euphoria. And that's the point. It's like, hey, let's be specific. This training protocol, it needs this for 90 minutes. Let's create that for 90 minutes, right? And if you do that, instead of relying on your caffeine, relying on, stims and all these things, and it's a really cool product. It's not going to weigh you down so much. You'll feel fresher after. You'll need less of it after. It kind of just helps you set the tone of like, I'm not going to think everything's important. So that's honestly my favorite product I've ever made. I love that product. I think it's just like, I personally love taking it. I don't go a day without training without it now. I love it so much. And so I think like, and that's an easy one too, because it's like, it's just a pre-workout, right? It's like, you don't have to inject anything. It's such a difference between just like normal pre's or caffeine, that it's like, this is probably the thing that you can swap out. That'll be the biggest difference maker.
I love it. One more question from Zach, and then we have a couple others. He said, what are the risks involved with any of the injectable products just through doing injections? So someone may be listening to this, they're like, Zach, they're like, I've been doing this for years, and I think I want to like dip my toe into some of these injectable pre-workouts or injectable carnitine and things like that. Are there any risks involved, and what should someone look out for?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So yeah, I mean, there's always like, I mean, I would be a liar if I said there wasn't risk involved. Like, there's kind of risk involved with everything. I mean, you can get a bad injection. Like, if you've ever had a bad injection, it's like you just hit something funny, or maybe you were like a little too stemmed up, and you're like, wow, this is just a little more sore, So it can be a little sore. You can get kind of that injection site like aggravation. I think it's pretty rare. Like, I really don't get it a lot, but even I still get it sometimes. And then when that happens, it's like, hey, let's just take a couple of days off, let the site kind of calm down, let your system catch up, and like, you'll be okay. But I mean, not really, other than just like you might get some side injection soreness. Like, and they're usually like, with glutathione, I've never had a bad one with glutathione. Never had a bad one. I think like
That's the
it's pretty
easiest
rare.
one ever. And like,
I know you can
even
do a
when
ton of
some of my
it.
athletes are kind of like nervous or anxious, they're like, I don't know about that. Almost all the time I say like, hey man, then just do glutathione. Like I guarantee, like it's going to be the easiest thing. Well, maybe not
Yeah.
guarantee, but probability is pretty high. That's going to be the easiest thing ever.
yeah, if you're going to start an injection, we go to great lengths with the way that glutathione is manufactured to make sure that it's like, because you normally hear like glutathione's so painful. Like, I don't know if you've heard that, but it's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I promise you, I went to extreme lengths to make sure that this is like the easiest injection of all time. And it is like, you can do like a ton of it. And it's not, so if you're nervous about injections, you're like, oh man, I don't know, like this sounds kind of crazy. So start with glutathione. Is like, if the injection is your fear, you'll get a lot of benefit from it. And it's pretty easy. I think carnitine, like we go really try to make our carnitine, like that's another one people think can be really painful, but we go at great lengths too to make sure our carnitine is manufactured in a way that's not painful. So, they're pretty, like, I think carnitine, glutathione are easy ones to start with.
Awesome. This next one is a question from me, just based off of the last podcast episode. We had Duncan Ness on the podcast. He has a master's in nutrition, and he's a combat sport weight cut specialist. And we were talking about some of the rehydration protocols that he uses with his athletes. And I was asking him about berberine and glycerol monostearate and things. And I wanted to ask you, have you ever used the Max Uptake product? And if you could even break down what's in there, have you used it for post-weight cut rehydration?
Yeah, I don't think I've had a single athlete not use Max Uptake for post weigh-in rehydration. It's such an easy, like, easy win. Like every single one of Mason's weigh-ins, the second he's done, he's popping Max Uptake. It's like we're giving him like 8 Max Uptake, drink some water. It's really awesome for rehydrating you. It really opens up like all the insulin, GLUT4 pathways. It's basically just like, hey, I'm preparing my cell to receive glucose. I'm preparing my cell to receive water. Why would I not utilize that? It's such a yeah, I mean, I love Max Uptake. It's one of my favorite products. Like, I feel like I'm like just blabbing about my own stuff, but I love it. I think it's a great product. With like post hydration, you can do, and like your stomach stays like, it's just digesting. You're just getting full. You're like, man, like, this is going really, so it's cool. I do really like it. Yeah.
It's been a while since I've done any sort of weight cut, but if I were to do another one, Max Uptake would definitely be something I would use for myself, and even for my own training, just post-workout meals. Like sometimes, like exactly like you said, you get lean enough where you're so hungry after a really hard jiu-jitsu training session, and having something like Max Uptake just kind of has helped what feels like the absorption of all those nutrients. Just feels like it's instead of a rock sitting in my gut, it feels like I can eat it and just like digest it quicker per se, and just feel fuller afterwards. And sometimes I even feel like I look different afterwards. Like, man, like I feel like
you're like, I'm kind of jacked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what's going
It's
on?
like that went to the right places.
Exactly.
Yeah, for
100%. Sure. I listened to a bunch of different podcasts you were on over this last week just to prepare for today's interview, and you made a brief mention on one of Mark Bell's podcasts about using cryotherapy as a weight cutting tool. Can you break that down a little bit more, kind of like what's going on there?
Yeah, man. Yeah, you kind of have to set it up the right way with it. But cryotherapy, it causes a shock. It causes this nice like shock to your body where it actually kind of makes your body nice and hot and prepares you for sweating. So if you want to like, if like everyone's biggest fear when you're like sweating is like you get in the sun, you're like, I'm not sweating. Crap. Like, what do I do? It's like if you set yourself up right for it, you can always get yourself to sweat. And one of the things that needs to happen for you to sweat is you actually have to have, enough sympathetic ligand. So like, what's funny is like, and you can do this as an experiment. It's really crazy actually to watch. Cause, if you're in the sauna and you're on your phone, let's say you're just on social media trying to distract yourself, you all of a sudden stop sweating. You're like, it's really crazy. But if you put your phone down and you just focus on your breathing, all of a sudden you'll start sweating again. Right. And so you have to have like these certain things to happen, right, for you to start sweating and like for your body to think, oh, my body's hot, this is good, versus my body's hot, oof, let's cool off, right? If you're relaxed, you kind of cool off. But if you're up, right? And it's like, hey, I want my body to be warm. I want this to be, this way, then it's not going to sweat. But what cryotherapy does is kind of forces this like, hey, we're going to force everything down. We're going to force all this down and give you a nice reset, right? And that reset, that forced reset really opens up your ability to sweat and continue to drop water later.
Gotcha. So in some of the stuff that Duncan and I talked about when it comes to weight cutting, there's a bunch of jiu-jitsu competitions where they have same-day weigh-ins. So you can't really do like a super intense water cut. But would you implement something like cryotherapy where if someone's going to compete on Saturday, say their first match is at 3 p.m., but they get the chance to weigh in at 9 a.m., would you suggest maybe the day before they do a little bit of cryotherapy, hit the sauna just a little bit to lose some of that water? They go weigh in. After they weigh in, use something like max uptake as part of the rehydration process to get fueled up to then compete later in the afternoon?
Yeah, that's actually not a bad idea at all. It's force it down. Let me sweat out a little bit. Let me get nice and parasympathetic. Go to sleep. I like that. I think I like that better than getting up and sweating right before. I feel like that's too much stress on the body to wake up. I don't get a chance to sleep again, and I somehow have to rehydrate, pay the cost of this, and then go compete. That's a lot. So yeah, doing the cryo, it's like, cool, I'm calm. I can't bring my phone into the cryotherapy. How many times have I talked about the phone? I hate the phone. It's like I just see so many people with it, but it's like, cool, I'm good. I'm good. I got the response that I needed. I'm going to sweat a little bit. Like give yourself like, I don't know, 2 to 4 hours, like after you do cryo, and you'll sweat much better. Like you're setting yourself up for it really well.
Nice. Fantastic. Well, I think that's a great place to close. Jake, this has been absolutely amazing.
Really quick.
Thank
Can I actually ask you one question? So I was hoping I could ask you for your euphoria experience. Like, how, like in the process of like, okay, where were you at before, you took it? How did it make you feel? And then what was it like coming off? Just kind of like that. What was the euphoria experience like for you?
Yeah, it's been very, very interesting. So to give a little bit of context, before like October, November, December, my pre-workout for when I was lifting was pretty standard. Double shot of espresso, so about like 90 to 100 milligrams of caffeine, 2 tablespoons of honey. You put me on that a couple years ago, which has been great. So I have the caffeine and the fast digesting carbs, and then I would use 1 milliliter of iridescence. And most of my training sessions were all pretty either pretty twitchy or pretty heavy. Like I wouldn't say like I was powerlifting or anything, but it'd have like some sort of heavy compound lift, some sort of jump, some sort of explosive movement. So kind of like very ATP PC dominant, I would say.
Yeah.
And then I kind of realized, okay, I think I want to work more on work capacity and kind of just build out my engine a little bit. So I stopped taking iridescence because I didn't want to use it specifically for that. And so I wasn't taking anything except the caffeine and the carbs. And it felt okay. Like it was fine, right? Like I don't like doing work capacity stuff anyways, but it is what it is. And so then this week started using the Euphoria. It really felt like I was getting, I hope this makes sense. It felt like I was getting the arousal bump that I needed and like a little bit more focus and clarity, but not so high like I felt like with the iridescence. With the iridescence, like even if I had like, 6 rounds of 90 seconds on, 90 seconds off, if I took iridescence, I'd be like, forget that. Like I'm loading up the bar. I want to do something a little bit heavier.
Yeah, for sure. I love iridescence for that.
So it just felt like it was more motivating to do something a little bit more intense. And Euphoria felt like it was the perfect amount of arousal for this work capacity stuff that I've been going through. And so those are kind of the only training sessions that I've used it for. And then post training, I feel like I haven't tried using it in the afternoon, but I feel like I could if I needed to. That's a big reason why I train in the morning is because I want to have some caffeine and like want to be able to like not
like
have
being stimmed up a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly. So I feel like if I needed to go lift after this at like lunchtime or something, I could take something like Euphoria and not be worried that my sleep is just going to get wrecked later on.
Yeah. Cool. Well, no, thank you for that. I love hearing that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, thanks for helping me getting stocked up. You guys have I'll say this, like you have been incredibly helpful and incredibly kind and just sharing information, just sharing resources, sharing, any new like products you're coming out with. Like you have been incredibly kind and generous to helping me, not just as an athlete, but as a coach. And I really, really appreciate it, man.
No, that means the world to me. I feel like, if you're given something, what is it but to share it, like that's the best part. So like, I just like, I love, I mean, that's the whole point of like this transcendence thing I'm doing right now, right? It's like, I have all this knowledge and here it is. Like, here's it for everybody. It's like, just, I love that. So no, that means a lot. Thank you for saying that.
Absolutely, man. And yeah, this Transcendence app seems pretty exciting. So if you want, like when you're ready to promote it more, or when it's ready to for everyone to jump on, like I'd love to have you back on the show, and maybe you can give us like a live demo on how it
Oh,
works
that'd
and
be
how it can
cool.
be implemented and all that. Because it sounds like this is going to revolutionize a lot of people's lives, not just from a training and performance context, but just an overall health and quality of life context.
Yeah, and I honestly think that is the biggest limiting factor for most people to have better training. Is like, hey, let's take care of like all this stuff first, because like you can take all the best drugs, all the best supplements, but if you don't take care of your life first, it's like it's not predictable. Like you don't know how this drug's gonna work, Like it. But if you control all of this, it's like, man, now this drug's a plus. Now this is like, now we're getting to the fun stuff. Now it's like, and it's controllable and you're safe and you're not dying and it's awesome, and you're not getting constrained. So the whole idea of it is like, let's get those constraints out, and then we're gonna help you, utilize whatever you want to utilize after that. It's cool. I'm excited for it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, Jake, where can people find you? And if anyone's interested in any of the stuff we've talked about today, where can they go to?
I think the social media, I'm trying to be more active on there. That's a big thing I'm trying to do is I'm going to share all the information that I possibly can on stuff. A lot of people might not love it or understand it, but I'm going to. And so if you go onto my social media, JKB_43, I'll be posting stuff all year on that. We'll be getting into all sorts of fun stuff. I have like 100 videos that I've filmed, and I just really suck at chopping them up, but I'm going to try. And then the Euphoria page, that is, the over the counter supplementation. That is Euphoria. Man, it's in my Instagram. I can't remember actually exactly what it is. And then Better Through Biology is the last one. We try to put out a lot of good content on like exactly how these things work and how to utilize them. So if you're interested, go learn more on there. We'll be posting a lot of stuff there. And yeah, and thanks for having me, man. It really means a lot.
Absolutely, bro. It was my pleasure. Lift heavy, roll hard. Catch y'all later. Peace.